Alright guys, in this video we're going to create an API controller, and this might throw you off a bit. The reason we're doing this is because, for one, we're using jQuery. All of our calls are going to be jQuery based. It's an Ajax application. So logically, if I think about this, we're building two extra portions. One's going to be for to-do, the other's going to be for notes. So we have those two categories, and we also have the user category. And these all kind of represent something in our database as well. The problem I have with that is I'm basically creating controllers just to have access points to do a lot of logic. In an Ajax-based application, in this instance, I feel that it should be based under an API URL to do our Ajax calls, so it's all consistent, easy to update and find what we're looking for. And if we need to access models, it'll be very easy too. So that's what we're going to do in this video, is set up our API controller. So we'll create a new file under controllers and call it API. And just type in API makes you feel cool. Class API extends CI controller. And this isn't really going to have anything like the dashboard does with an index file and everything. We are going to want something like this though in the dashboard construct. So make sure you open your dashboard construct and copy this. Okay, I'll just paste it in here. Now we want the API to be usable, but we don't want it to be used on a certain function, and that's going to be registering a user. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do what we call refactoring. The first thing is, let's comment this out so we don't get ahead of ourselves, is the user controller. It loads the user model. It has a login and a register feature, and these were all tests down here. Okay, so I'm going to cut the register and the login out of it. I'm going to paste them in here, and step by step I have to realize, well, I need the user model to check data. As you can see, we're using it there, and back in our user controller I'll need to cut this guy out, and I'll copy them and leave them here so we can just call this a test class or something. And I don't want to put it in the construct because we don't want to construct the user every time, like if we're going to do a note or a to-do. So I'll throw the user model right here. When they call login, it'll load the user model, and when they call register, it'll load the user model. Now we could actually instantiate it right above where we call it, save a little on memory, meaning if this validation fails, we won't even have the model loaded, which is perfectly fine. And let's see if we can do the same for here. Nope, looks like we're always going to load the user model, but again, I'll just paste it right above him. Okay, so that's step one. Next, we have to realize, where is this being called? So I'll go to my home. I know it's getting called in my home view right here. So this would be API/login. Okay. Then I know it's getting called in register. This would become API/register. Okay. Now let's see. This is the user model. I'm going to rename this to test, and I'm going to rename the user file to squiggly test, and that can't be accessed. We're just keeping a reference of this so that, you know, don't delete old code. You might want to use it someday and look back. So I'll close that guy out. We need to test the login now. So if you updated your database or not, I'll just use the admin login. So admin. Let's see what happened. Let's try it again. Login, and go to network, and PHP undefined property input. Okay. So step at a time. I forgot to do the parent construct. We need the CI controller to be constructed. So let's try that again. Login. It works. Let's try to register a new guy. I'll say John. john@google.com, and his password will just be test. Register, and he's logged in. And just for safe measure, I'll try John and test. Okay, so that works with the API. Now, with this little portion here, what I don't want people to be able to do is call certain functions if they're not logged in. And that's not going to be used in every method, so it should never be in the construct. So at the top, I'm going to say private function require login. And I'll uncomment each line. Okay. And you'll see that this is calling this logout, but that was in the user model. So I suppose we'll go back and just grab that method. I apologize, the user controller. Well, I suppose not. Login, register. Okay. Our logout, was it in the dashboard? I see. Okay. Since this is an Ajax only API, we don't really need to log out. We just need to return that you can't do this without that permission. So I'll copy just this output, set output, and we'll do this and return false. Okay. Now to save on some space, we could just cut this. And do that. If the session user ID is false, we will turn result, and I'll throw in an error here. You are not authorized. Okay. Now we're not using this yet, and you might notice that my code convention changed because I'm used to doing camel case, but with URLs, you know, it's going to be one long word. So I'm going to keep with convention and just do require underscore login. So we have login, register, and we're going to create a couple methods here. I'll say public function create to do. We're just templating it out first. Delete to do. Update to do. So we'll copy all these again, and this will be for create note. Note. And for these, some of these require IDs, so I can already prepare this. I'll say this input post to do underscore ID. Whoops. And I'll say to do ID. And when we delete it, to do. And when we update a note, we're just templating this out right now. Okay, so we know all that. Now we are going to need models for these. So since we just refactored all this code, let's check something. Let's refresh the page and make sure we don't have any errors. Okay, looks pretty smooth. Next, let's do a little bit of code cleanup. Well, not so much code cleanup, but lines of demarcation. I learned this from one of my bosses, and they're beautiful. I'll just do // space and then a bunch of dashes. And I'll just do it one line before the 70th line, like that. And when I put it between each method, it helps to break up what you're trying to read. It might sound really silly, but man, it really helps me. If you're a visual person, this will help you a whole lot. Okay, like that. Just by scrolling through, I can see where things are broken up real quickly. I'll throw it in my home one too. I like to do a space after each one, or a new line. Okay. And what do we got? A dashboard. I always like to keep it at the top and bottom. This is a preference. You can do any kind of demarcation you want. I just like it so much. And our models. So we have one up here. Here. We're going to add parameters eventually. PHP docket, because that's how professionals do it. And this video is to move you on to professionalism. Okay? So that's good. That's good. The thing is, this require login is going to be used now in these methods below. Now remember, we're in the API controller, and I just went to the require login private function we created, and what we're going to do is paste it at the top of each one of these. So they can't create a login, they can't create a to-do unless they're logged in. They can't update it, they can't delete it, they can't create a note, and so on and so forth. That'll wrap up this video.